Psychology of people having few or no friends. There's a quiet ache that shows up when your world gets smaller. Not dramatic, just subtle. You scroll through your phone, pause, and realize there's no one you really want to message. No easy back and forth. No one who already knows the story. That moment can sting more than outright loneliness. I remember noticing it one evening sitting alone, thinking this isn't sadness exactly, so what is it? When we have few or no friends, we often assume something is wrong with us. But Carl Rogers wrote On Becoming a Person, what is most personal is most universal. That idea matters, because this experience feels isolating precisely because we think we're the only ones living it. We're not. For Donald Winnicott captured the emotional tension in playing, and reality when he said, "It is a joy be hidden, and disaster not to be found." People with few connections often live right in that space, partly protected, partly unseen, learning who they are when the noise fades, and only the inner voice remains. Number 1. Solitude is often a sign of emotional depth, not deficiency. There's a quiet misunderstanding in modern life that equates being socially busy with being emotionally healthy. Psychology suggests something more nuanced. People with higher emotional awareness often feel less satisfied by surface-level interactions, not because they lack social skills, but because their inner world asks for depth, meaning, and authenticity. I've noticed that when someone begins to listen more carefully to their own thoughts and feelings, casual connections can start to feel strangely loud or empty. Carl Jung spoke to this inner shift when he wrote in The Development of Personality that loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. This kind of solitude isn't about absence, it's about mismatch. When your values deepen, your tolerance for shallow exchange often shrinks. That can feel painful, especially in a culture that treats constant connection as proof of worth. Psychologically, this phase often appears during periods of self-reflection or growth. The mind is reorganizing, questioning old roles, old identities, old ways of relating. Fewer friendships can be a side effect of this internal honesty. It's not that you've become less human, it's that you're becoming more selective about what reaches you emotionally. And that selectivity, though lonely at times, is often the foundation of long-term psychological stability. Number 2. Fewer friends can mean stronger emotional boundaries. As emotional intelligence grows, so does the ability to sense what drains you and what restores you. Many people begin to notice that maintaining certain relationships requires constant self-betrayal, over-explaining, over-giving, or shrinking parts of themselves to keep peace. I've come to see that stepping back from those dynamics is not selfish, it's a form of emotional self-respect. Psychotherapist Harriet Lerner explains this clearly in The Dance of Anger, writing that setting limits is about taking care of yourself. When boundaries strengthen, not everyone comes along for the change. Some friendships quietly dissolve when you stop rescuing, performing, or absorbing emotions that were never yours to carry. From a psychological perspective, fewer friends can indicate a healthier nervous system. You're no longer driven by fear of abandonment or approval seeking. Instead, relationships become choices rather than obligation. This shift can feel unsettling at first because it removes familiar patterns, but it also creates space for connections rooted in mutual respect. Boundaries don't make you cold, they make you clear, and clarity often reduces quantity before it improves quality. This phase isn't a loss of connection, it's a recalibration, aligning your relationships with who you're becoming, rather than who you once needed to be. Number 3. When you no longer fit old roles, some connections fall away. Psychological growth often begins quietly, but its effects are unmistakable. As self-awareness deepens, many people realize they've been living inside roles shaped by expectation rather than truth. The listener who never speaks, the helper who never rests, the agreeable one who never disagrees. When those roles change, relationships built around them can start to loosen. I've learned that this isn't betrayal, it's differentiation. In family system psychology, Murray Bowen described differentiation as the ability to remain connected while becoming oneself. In family therapy, in clinical practice, he explains that growth often brings relational tension, because not everyone benefits from your increased clarity. Some connections were held together by your silence or compliance. When that disappears, the bond does too. This can feel like rejection, but psychologically it's often alignment. You're no longer abandoning parts of yourself. Maintain closeness. Old friends may not know how to relate to this newer version of you, and that gap can create distance without anyone doing anything wrong. The loss hurts precisely because it once mattered. Yet this stage is essential. Identity development requires releasing outdated attachments. When friendships fade during periods of growth, it doesn't mean you're becoming harder to love. It means you're becoming harder to manipulate, ignore, or misunderstand. That kind of integrity narrows your circle, but it strengthens your sense of self. Number 4. The human need for belonging doesn't disappear, it refines. Having fewer friends doesn't mean you've outgrown the need for connection. Psychology is clear on this. Belonging is fundamental. What changes is not the need itself, but the standard by which connection feels safe. I've noticed that as people become more emotionally attuned, their nervous systems become less tolerant of performative or unpredictable relationships. In Attached, psychiatrist Amir Levine writes that we are biologically programmed to seek closeness, but secure closeness requires emotional consistency. When you start prioritizing regulation over stimulation, quantity naturally gives way to quality. From a modern psychology perspective, this refinement is healthy. The brain seeks environments where it doesn't have to stay hypervigilant, where tone, timing, and intention feel predictable. That's why fewer relationships can feel calmer, even if they feel lonelier at first. Your system is choosing safety over noise. Belonging doesn't vanish in solitude. It becomes more honest. You may feel moments of longing, but they coexist with relief. This isn't emotional withdrawal, it's emotional discernment. You're learning that connection isn't about being surrounded, but about being understood, and that understanding begins with how you relate to yourself. Number 5. Being alone can become a training ground for inner stability. When social circles shrink, something subtle but powerful often happens inside. Without constant external feedback, the mind turns inward, not in isolation, but in integration. Psychology shows that time spent alone can strengthen emotional regulation, self-trust, and resilience. I've come to believe this is one of the least talked about benefits of having few friends. You stop outsourcing your sense of worth. Psychologist Erik Erikson wrote in Identity and the Life Cycle that identity is formed through periods of both connection and withdrawal. Solitude gives the psyche room to consolidate who you are, separate from roles and expectations. Without that space, identity remains fragile, dependent on validation. This stage can feel uncomfortable because there's no one to distract you from yourself. But that discomfort is instructive. You begin to notice your own rhythms. What calms you, what unsettles you, what you truly need. Over time, this builds emotional steadiness. You're less reactive, less desperate for approval, more grounded in your own experience. Being alone doesn't mean you're waiting for life to begin. It means life is teaching you how to stand without leaning too heavily on others. When future relationships arrive, they no longer ask to complete you, only to meet you. Conclusion: you are not behind, you are becoming. It's easy to believe that a full life must look crowded, busy, and socially validated. Psychology tells a quieter truth. Many periods of growth are marked, not by expansion, but by reduction. Fewer friends, fewer roles, fewer places where you feel you must perform. I've learned that this doesn't mean life is shrinking. It means it's reorganizing around what's real. In The Road Less Traveled, psychiatrist Scott Peck wrote, "Mental health is an ongoing process of dedication to reality at all costs. Sometimes reality includes loneliness. Sometimes it includes long stretches of self-company. Neither is a failure of character." If you have few or no friends right now, It may simply mean you are between versions of yourself. The old connections no longer fit, and the new ones haven't formed yet. This in-between space can feel heavy, but it is also fertile. You are learning how to belong to yourself without abandoning your depth. You are not late. You are not broken. You are in the middle of becoming someone who will one day connect, not out of fear but out of truth.